shadows crawling deep, this world awake when others sleep. Tarantula husbands, reptiles align. Best beginner friends across the time. Mistakes we shout to burn away the doubt. Fangs out podcast spreading light about. His tails clatter off like sharp and raw, handling with care against nature's law. Home is built for the wild at heart, a community torch where passion starts. Beginner stumbles, we've been there before. With love and grit, we open the door. Fangs out for the creature.
Hey Kasey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Here.
I'm really excited to have you on. So, everyone, just a quick introduction. This is Kasey. She is a certified veterinary technician, right?
That's right.
What? And I wanted to ask you because when I was younger, my dream was to be a veterinarian, right? And then I had a guinea pig when I was 10, right? And I think I ended up having to put it down. It had like a major health issue. I was like, I'm never doing this. So, what inspired you to become a CVT?
That's a great question. So I am actually a second career vet tech, I guess. I was actually in a totally different field before I became a vet tech. Um, I was actually in graphic design and printing. I was doing artsy stuff. I really liked it. But the corporate world wasn't for me, and I was really struggling at that time that I wanted to, expand like professionally, and I wasn't able to do that without a degree. And so it came down to like, all right, if I have to go back to school, like, let's do something like worthwhile. Like, let me do something really fulfilling. And working with animals just really seemed to be like the right call. And as far as being a veterinary technician, made the most sense for me because I didn't, I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I like the idea of being a nurse.
What is the difference, if you don't mind me asking you, between I know when it comes to humans what the difference is between nurses and the doctors, but what is it that made you gravitate more towards nursing rather than wanting to be a doctor?
Absolutely. Like I love the hands-on aspect of being a nurse. I use the term nurse interchangeably. Some of our human counterparts don't really agree that vet tech should be called nurses. It's just a whole title protection thing. It's okay, but so I might use that term interchangeably, so technician, nurse. But the real difference is um, who's doing the technical skills, like who is placing that IV catheter, who is monitoring this patient, who is physically taking care of the patient, not the brain part, not the like, let's figure out the disease processes, how we're going to treat it. Yes, that's all part. Yes, we need that. We need the doctor to do that. But I like to do I was about to say the execution part, but that's the wrong word. Um, we're
You like
talking
the
about
hands
first.
on? It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I
That
like
was
the
great.
hands-on part. Yeah. Um, I like working with my hands. I like the idea of being a nurse, but for critters.
I love that though, because you're actually engaging with the animal more, it sounds like. Because it's always I'm going to call them nurses because that's what you guys are to me. But I love when the nurses come in and they're actually talking to me and they're holding the animal and they're back there engaging and they're just, it takes a skill to do that, especially with animals that you're really not familiar with because maybe they're a first time patient or something like that.
Hmm. Especially when we're working with our exotics, whether it's reptiles or small mammals like guinea pigs, um, these animals are generally going to be prey animals, so they're going to be very stressed when they come into a veterinary situation, for sure.
Right. That's a very engaging environment for them. Almost
L-
overstimulating in a way, you know.
Lots of sounds, lots of smells, lots of things that they just don't know about, and especially if you're thinking about our guinea pigs, our bunnies, hamsters, any of those sort of prey species, like the vet hospital is a terrifying place.
Oh, absolutely. They probably think animals are back there just getting, going to the gallows. Meanwhile, it's like, no, I swear, we're just trying to help you. We
We're just
love
trying to
you.
help you. I know you're just a little baby.
Right. What is that like categorized as one of the harder things about being a CBT? Would you say that's one of the harder things?
I think so. I think compared to human medicine is we can't our patients don't talk to us. We have to really use our noodles and figure out what's going on. Like we have to have a whole care team that really figures out like what is going on with the pet and then placing orders on like how to best treat that animal. Um, so I would say it's more difficult because we don't have the ability to communicate the way our human counterparts can. So that, yeah, it's just a little bit of a challenge.
See, and that's something that I think a lot of us don't really think about when it comes to the healthcare of our animals. Because with reptiles and things like that, we have to look for health concerns or things like that through maybe fecal samples or heat pits or their eyes, something like that, which
Mhm.
it's more common than not for a lot of reptiles to have health conditions, right?
Absolutely. So I would say, well, it's not so much that it's common for them to have it. It's more so that 85% of the medical issues we see involving exotic pets have to do with husbandry issues. So that means we're not talking about our cancers or our trauma, things like that, accidents. Um, we're talking about like burns, vitamin deficiencies, um, mainly vitamin deficiencies. That's a huge one. Um, but shedding issues, upper respiratory infections, like all of these things that can be prevented with appropriate husbandry. So it's
And
super
that's
important that we get
interesting.
that down first.
That's interesting. Excuse me, that you bring that up. I had something lodged in my throat. Okay. Um that you bring up the husbandry because I feel like husbandry, I was going to actually talk to you about that, is
Yeah,
so important when it comes to exotic animals, regardless if it's a frog or a snake or like even a bird. They
right.
all have specific requirements, and those requirements are there for a reason. They come from so many different parts of the world.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And that whole thing, like we're taking an animal and we're not even gonna get into conservation and like whether people think this is ethical or not. We're taking an animal that is native somewhere that's not an enclosure in our home. So we need to make that enclosure in our home as close to what they need, what they have in the wild, as we can.
Mimicking that natural environment to like the best of our abilities.
Right, right. And you can do cutesy things. Don't get me wrong. I like a good like ATAT or something mixed in there. Like don't like it's all right. But like just try to like really think about your plants and your substrate and things like that. Like, and I'm not even saying you have to do live plants. If you can, that's fantastic. But like, just making sure you have the right temperature and the right humidity. If you can start there, like that's huge.
Especially that especially that humidity aspect, right? Because I recently, my ball python, I noticed he was kind of having some issues shedding for a while, and it's because he has way too much airflow in the enclosure that he's been in. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so important to also make sure that when you're investing in your enclosure, you're making sure that it's suitable for that reptile because ball python they need that humidity, but it's also kind of it's hard because it's a gamble. It's like if it goes too high, it could cause a problem. If it goes too low, it's a problem. It's almost like it's a credit score, you know?
Hmm. Right, right. And that's why I think about like keeping chameleons. Chameleons are notoriously one of
Yeah.
the harder reptiles to keep. And it's because of keeping that heat and humidity balance needs to be almost perfect for that animal to truly thrive. And it's difficult to maintain that.
Do you or have you worked with a lot of chameleons? Because I've heard, and I could be completely off on this, correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard chameleons are, like you said, kind of one of the most difficult and prone to health problems just because of the way that they need a setup.
Yeah. Professionally, I have worked with them. So I've seen a lot of not so great cases. I used to work for a clinic that would see the Petco animals. So they would see, like when the Petco animals weren't doing so hot, they would come see us. So just so you guys know, Petco brings their pets to the vet when they need it. Just
That's
throwing that
actually
out
very good to know because there's
there.
so many things that circle about these giant pet stores, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure they do. Sometimes, but sometimes, and this is beyond. Sometimes it's beyond what they can do, and like the animal comes in shipped beyond what they can do. Like so, then they need us. Um, so I've seen some chameleons that just do not do well. Just failure to thrive, shedding issues. Females tend to get egg bound very frequently. So that's how I've seen them like in a professional setting. I've also, as you all know, or some of you might know, I worked for Zen Habitats for a couple years, which is like cool. Like we have a great relationship still. Um, but I was their animal care manager, and we had two panther chameleons that lived in the office that I took care of
They're
specifically, and
beautiful.
they were fantastic little critters.
That's awesome. They're so pretty too. Like them specifically, their coloration is just through the roof.
I love panther chameleons, and I think I'm biased because they're definitely the sweeter of the chameleons.
I've noticed that they're always more or they're less reluctant, to come up and kind of approach you. They're a little more curious. They're like, "Okay, I see you.
Yeah,
We can be friends."
we got some bugs.
Right. Give me some worms. We'll be fine.
Yeah, we good, we good. Like Jacksons and Dales, they're like no, 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 no.
Every
I don't want to
Jackson's
be friends.
chameleon I've ever met has been so just like rude to me. I'm like, I just want to love you. And they
You're
don't want
so cool
anything to
looking.
do with it. Right?
Yeah,
They're so
you're so
cool.
cool. Just love me.
Right? What has now I have to ask too, because sometimes you'll probably have situations where just kind of falling along the category of what's the hardest thing. And I know sometimes you'll probably have situations as a CBT where you have a reptile or an animal that comes in that is kind of past. They're not going to get better. There's nothing you can do. What do you
Mhm.
do in that kind of situation? How do you handle that? I know that's
Um,
like the fun question to ask, totally.
yeah. No, so honestly, you got to do the kindest thing to the animal. Is the animal beyond a point of fixing? Unfortunately, if your husbandry was so poor that this animal has suffered, to the point where we can't reverse metabolic bone disease or a vitamin A deficiency, um, then the kindest thing to do for that animal is to put them to sleep, to end that suffering. Now, that really sucks. Like, bottom line, that sucks.
Right.
What we can take away from it is education. That person most likely, and this is unfortunate, but most people who experience this will not own that type of animal again, and they actually will try to educate about how difficult these animals are. And I know that we don't want to have people deterring away from our hobby, but true education is very important. Like real life experience is very important, I think, for people to
Absolutely.
understand. Um, so that's my little like little tiny positive takeaway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree, especially like when you're in this hobby, that's very important and essential to remember and know that that hands-on and that experience, that's what's going to teach you to do better in the long run.
Yeah, yeah. So if that person decides to get another leopard gecko, they're most likely, it just like statistically, they're most likely not going to. But if they do decide to try again, they have some more knowledge in their back pocket
Right. They've
about what
kind of
to do.
had that experience. They're knowing, okay, I shouldn't use this substrate. Maybe I should keep the heat a little higher, lower.
Hmm.
Definitely.
Right. Like it stinks that they had to make a grave mistake, but
Right. But it's
mhm.
almost like, the live and learn mentality that you kind of have to have, especially when you have reptiles, because animals that lay so many animals at a time, and not all reptiles do that, but a lot of them do, you have their eggs, things like that. Not all of them are going to make it. So that's a huge
I
thing
know.
too to take into consideration, I think, when people buy
Yeah,
animals.
I think we put and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but we put a very, some people put a very high, I don't know how to, I'm not sure how I want to word that actually.
You're good. I do that all the time.
But like, I don't want to say that any life is less than another life. I also want that to be also like, I don't want anyone to think that, oh, it's a reptile. It can just be like, meh. It's,
Right.
every life is super important.
Absolutely. I like you're so genuine about it. Like every life is super important. We're gonna end it at that.
Yes, that's all I can
That was
do.
perfect. My next question, well, my actually kind of two-parter. When I think of taking my exotic animals to the vet, 'cause, like I take my lizards to the vet, I'll take my snakes to the vet here and there. Just like they need a checkup. I want to make sure they're doing
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
But I also have tarantulas.
Yeah.
Do you work with tarantulas as well as a CVT, or are you exclusive to like, reptiles and things that are larger?
So personally, I have not. I mean, I personally keep tarantulas and invertebrates, but I have not had one in a clinical setting. Though I feel like I could. I'm not being cocky, but like I feel like I could help in a
Yeah,
husbandry situation. Like I think I could help with education if a
I
client came
absolutely
in.
think you could.
Yeah.
100%.
So I do think there is hope for a invertebrate patient if someone has the right experience. And I do think that as more and more keepers keep these guys and love these guys and everything, um, you know, it they'll be seen more, you know,
Right.
like, and I don't personally know how to do this, but I heard of a technician who worked for the same company that I do, went to a workshop about drawing blood from tarantulas. So like, there's way we can get diagnostics on tarantulas. So like,
Wow.
wild, right?
Sorry, my mind just went like, hold on. She just
Yeah.
said blood drawn from tarantulas. That's insane.
Yeah, so like I don't know how to do it. I'm hoping to find a workshop at some point. Like I tried to like keep more and more exotic skills under my tool belt. Um so the next time I see a workshop that involves invertebrates, like I'm really interested in learning to do it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Oh my gosh. That is so
Yeah.
cool. So, do
Yeah.
you find the smaller exotic animals to be a little more difficult to work with than the larger ones, or is it kind of reversed?
Um,
Or does it matter, I guess, too? Because I know everyone has their own personality.
yeah, everyone has their own personality because a large angry monitor is going to be
Right.
just as difficult as your angry little tokay gecko.
Right. Exactly.
So, um, it's really gonna depend. It's really species dependent, and you have to like just kind of like go off the vibes of the animal and really just work with them. Like for X-rays exam as an example, like a dog and a cat, we can pretty much, get them to lay down, we'll hold their legs, we can get nice straight pictures. We're not doing that with a snake. Like, it's not gonna happen. So like we really just have to like
Right.
work with their body, use sandbags, use some tape, like try to get them as straight as possible. But like we're gonna have to take multiple pictures. Like it's just the way it is.
That's interesting with x-rays. How so that actually makes sense with snakes is you would just kind of work with them and guide them into more of a straight position. How do you how do you do that with lizards? I love how I'm just like, whoa, that's crazy. But
Yeah, yeah.
how do
So
you do
same
that
sort
with
of
lizards?
same principle. Like if possible, if the patient is stable enough, I am a very big fan of sedation, just because it calms everyone. Like not necessarily knock them out, but get them to a plane that they are a little dissociated. Like
Yeah. It's that
they don't know
twilight
what's
state
happening.
they're in.
Yeah, I think it's a lot calmer for them. And I think that's the same case with dogs and cats that are anxious. Um, but so for a lizard, ideal situation, we would like get them to a nice plane that they are sedate enough, and then we would actually tape their little legs to a flat board so that they're nice and straight, and then shoot the picture down.
I'm loving this conversation. I never thought about how you would x-ray a lizard, but it makes sense because you have to get them flat enough.
Right.
Oh my
So the
goodness.
little legs taped down.
That's so cute.
They
Have you
make it
found
feel
that lizards are a little bit easier to work with than snakes or more difficult than snakes?
I like a lizard. I like some legs. I think they're easier to hold on to.
Nice.
I
Lizards,
mean, I'm a
geckos, like the whole.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Even a good
nice.
turtle. Like there's something to hold on. Like they don't slip
You've
away as
got
easy.
grip there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. How difficult is it when you're working with these animals, though? I mean, as far as some of them are really, really tiny, and so I imagine that's kind of difficult to either get blood pressure or do you monitor heartbeats? I mean, how does that work when you have such small animals?
So for such a little guy, honestly, there's three main parameters that we're going to worry about, and that is our heart rate, our respiratory, and our temperature. But temperature is going to be dependent on our external environment, so we can monitor that based on heating pads, warmies, etc. Um, our heart rate is a little bit more difficult. So a stethoscope doesn't actually work through scales. So you have
Interesting.
to use, yeah, you have to use sound. It's called a Doppler. So basically, there's a little crystal that you make contact with the skin over either a vessel or the heart directly, and that contact makes a sound wave that bounces through this speaker, and you can hear the whoo, whoo, whoo of the heart.
Wow.
Hmm. It's
That's
wild.
cool.
Yeah, I wish I had a critter to do it. Like I wish I had the equipment to show you. It's so cool.
Right? You start hearing that sound, you're like, oh my goodness.
You're like that because it's different. Like when you hear sound through a stethoscope, yeah, you like it's a different. You can hear it. You can hear whooshes of the valves opening and such. But like with the Doppler, it's just a different. It's a very interesting sound, and because the heart rate of a reptile is so slow, so you get your lub dub, it just goes lub dub. Like you can hear like the
Whoa.
slowness.
That's
It's crazy.
wild.
Yeah.
So you had your temperature and then that was the heart,
Yeah.
which that's crazy. What was the other one that you had mentioned?
Just respiratory. And that's going to
Gotcha.
be dependent on animal. For a reptile specifically, maybe a breath, a 2 minute. As long as we're breathing, we're
As long
good.
as they're breathing, they're fine.
Yes.
I
I
feel like
mean,
that's kind of, even
I
as
feel
an
like if you
owner,
ask, like,
like,
yeah,
oh, you're good. Our volume's going in and out. You're fine. Go ahead.
I feel like if a criticalist, like an exotic criticalist, heard me talk, they'd be like, "Oh my God, what is she doing?" um, so my background is mainly in wildlife. I'm going to preface that.
I love that though.
Yeah.
That's a good background to have though in wildlife because like you specifically know things about so many different types of species.
Yeah, there's a lot of critters out there.
Do you have a favorite one that you like to work with?
Oh my God. If I went back into wildlife medicine, like I would like strictly work with Virginia possums. I love possums. I love raising possums. I love everything about the aspect of like the orphan raising of baby possums. I love it.
I love that. Possums are great though. They need more credit. They
they're
really
they're
do.
so important for our ecosystem. To eat so many ticks, all the bad ticks.
Right? We need those because then ticks
Hmm.
get on your reptiles. You don't want them on your reptiles, you should get yourself a possum.
Yeah,
It'll work out
absolutely.
perfectly.
Yeah, ticks are gross.
That's girl math right there.
Yes, possums. Possums in the yard. Eat the
Right.
possums.
You don't like ticks? Get a possum. Do you let's see, where are we at? Because I have a
Sorry,
list here. No, you're
I
fine. You're
know.
fine. I get ADHD, and so I learned. I'm like, you know what? You should make a list so you can like reference yourself. And I finally
I know.
did it. So
I have a list too.
I love
I
it.
haven't been following my list at all.
I haven't either, but it's okay. We're fine. We're doing amazing.
Yeah.
Um, the big thing that when it comes to reptiles, and this is even something that I admittedly have been really bad about in the past to the CBT. I used to actually be one of the people that's like, why do you need to take your reptile to the vet? You know, like it's a snake, it's a wild animal, you know, but I've learned that it's really, really essential. And especially after taking in a green keel belly lizard, he was a
Ooh.
rescue.
Hmm.
Um, so sweet, but he was beat up. He was
Yeah.
from a pet store, and it was just long story short, he's missing toes, tip of his tail. Took him to the vet, and it really set it in for me how important it is to take your animals or your reptiles in.
Mhm.
How do you feel about that? Is that something that we should be doing like regularly, or is it something where it's more if I notice something wrong, I should take them in?
So definitely, if you notice something wrong, I think best practice, gold standard, if you want to be like amazing, yearly. But
Okay.
like bare minimum when you first get them. Get them checked out when you like maybe after a 2 week acclimation period. Get them checked out. See if they have parasites, like whether they're external parasites like mites or internal parasites like hookworms, whipworms, coccidia, cryptosporosis. Like oh my god, there's so many nasty things they can carry that can ultimately destroy the rest of your collection. I don't like to use the term collection, but the rest of your critters. Um,
Right.
like so I think that's really important. So quarantine's really important too in that aspect, but I think bare minimum veterinary care when you first get them is I think very important. But if you can do yearly fecals, that's fantastic. If you can do yearly blood evaluations, that's even better. Like, but if you have 50 reptiles, I know that's not going to happen, and that's
Right.
understandable. Like,
Absolutely. But even the fecal tests, I feel like when I take any reptile in for a fecal test, it's usually, thank God, it's usually pretty good and it comes back clean. So we know their food
yeah,
source is right. But on the
right.
same hand, it's a more affordable test if you're looking for something more affordable, right? As opposed to a blood test.
Right. Yeah, fecal is very inexpensive. It's generally pretty quick. Like even if your clinic doesn't do it in house, 48 hours is like the lab send out. It's not bad. Um,
That's not
and
bad at
it
all.
gives
That's
you
very quick.
so yeah, it gives you so much information. Like if I had a microscope, I would do it at home, but I don't have a microscope.
What do you usually look for when it comes to like fecal tests? Are there certain things you're keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, so mainly you're looking for parasites. That's going to be your biggest thing. So you're looking under the microscope, you're looking for parasite eggs. So those worms will lay eggs that have a very distinct shape, and we basically mix the poop with a special like liquid, and it makes the eggs float to the top, and then we can look for them, and it's really fun to play with poop.
I think it's fascinating. It's just it's science at its core and it's awesome.
Yeah, science girlies. We're STEM girlies. Absolutely.
I love it. Absolutely. When
Mhm.
it comes to the quarantine, because you had mentioned quarantine setups, and I had always heard, and I've always seen people when they first bring a reptile home, quarantine it away from the rest of your reptiles. What is, I mean, I know, but I would like everyone else to know from you as a professional, what is the main reason that we want to quarantine our reptiles when we first bring them home?
Absolutely. It's going to be parasites. It's always parasites. Because these guys, depending on where they were sourced from, okay, let's be real. So there's like three three main ways the reptile is you're going to get the reptile. It's either wild caught, it was bred in a big facility, or it's bred by a small private breeder. So we have to take those we have to think about critically think about those things. So those animals were in situations with a lot of other animals, and the chances of one animal catching something and spreading it to the next and the next and the next is more likely. So now we take that animal away from that situation. And it might have been healthy in that situation, but now we've shipped it across the country and its immune system is deteriorating because it's stressed out. So those parasites are going to start to work a little bit more and like create an active infection. Um, and then you might spread to the rest of your critters and so on and so on. And then your critters are going to get it. And it's just like this whole big cycle
It
that
ends
like
up
never.
becoming a very vicious cycle.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's not to say that every animal that's coming in has parasites. I'm just saying, like, of those three options of getting an animal, that's most likely they're going to be from a larger volume of animals.
And that makes complete sense being in such close proximity to all these other animals. And then, too, with reptiles and a lot of exotic animals, knowing that their immune systems are not always as tough as maybe like a cat or a dog might be, you know? So,
Right.
small things that we do, transporting a cat from home to the car, cat's probably going to be mad but not care. Whereas your
Yes.
snake is going to be like, I'm going to have a heart attack. Hold on.
Yes. I am out of my environment. It's cold. Everything smells weird. I don't
Right.
know. I'm so
Yes.
weirded out. Granted, my snake is so weird because I bring him frequently to the clinic and to like events and stuff. So he's pretty cool in the car. Like he'll stick his head out of the carrier and then like looks around and stuff.
I love that. He's like a little dog.
Yeah, he's like, what up? What up?
Oh, that's
uh,
great.
but yeah, so all of these things can be super stressful, and stress can really do a number on the body. And we have to remember that reptiles also are super stoic, and they're not going to show us that they're sick until they're really sick.
Exactly. It's almost those moments where it's you don't notice it until it's too late and you're like, "Oh my gosh, how did you get this?" You know?
Yes, it's happened to me. Like it's, and I am a medical professional, and it's happened. Like it happens.
I think that's a really important thing to cover too is that it happens even to those of us who have been keeping reptiles for years. It's just kind of part of the game and part of the hobby.
Yeah, yeah. And I just like I hate to feel so willy nilly about lives. Like and I don't want anyone to think that of me. But
No.
like it's yeah, it just things happen and especially when you have a large again, a large volume of animals, like the instances of things happening do tend to happen more frequently. And but yeah, like I'm trying to think of like a good example of something that I noticed that went downhill like fast. No, I don't even know. Like I would say like it was my Amazon tree boa, but they're just like notoriously sensitive. He was fine, eating. Then one day, not alive. Like,
Let's see. And it's so interesting because that, I mean, even with the tarantulas, it's like you could do everything right. They are totally fine. All of a sudden, you got one that's passing, and it's like, what happened? You know, what
yeah.
did I
Like, what
do?
did I do? Yeah, and
Right.
like, and the things that I've learned from that, like I never did a fecal test on that one. I definitely should have. I was also told that it was a captive bred animal when I purchased it at an expo very naively. Then I learned more about the specific vendor and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, okay, so I really just bought a wild caught Amazon tree boa. Sick.
And that's actually a really good point, is that purchasing from these smaller, more reputable breeders, that's a huge thing when it comes to your reptile's health as well. Because if you're getting a wild caught animal, it's more likely that they ate a bug that had parasites,
Oh,
whereas these
100%.
smaller companies, they're like, no, we care, we know what we're feeding them, we know how to source it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, these wild caught guys, they're just riddled with yickies. And they're fine. The thing is they're fine in the wild. Like if they were left in the wild, they have the immune systems to deal with these natural parasites that they encounter. But we take them out of that and we stress them out, and that's when things go
That stress kind of just adds on to the disease and the problem itself.
Right. Exactly.
100%. And that's across the board, I think, for, regardless of what you want to keep, whether it's an arachnid or a snake or a gecko or a bird, a hamster, I'm not sure where
Mhm.
hamsters are in the wild. Not sure why I said that, but
No, they're there. They're there. They're in the desert.
are they really?
Yeah,
Where
100%.
I know this about reptiles, guys, but I gotta know where do you find hamsters in the wild?
In like the Middle East, there's a lot of there's hamsters.
That's amazing. I never knew that. I thought it was weird, like dogs, and we just kind of like bred them and made them. I know that sounds so dumb, but
No, it's not.
yeah.
It's not. But like, why would you think about these things? Yeah, no, everything, and like that's again, like you. This is why we got to get away from the habit trails for the hamsters. We need to make these natural, cool, deserty environments for them that they can thrive in. Like, yeah,
And that's wild to know, like and that's a great example right there. You just taught me that these hamsters are like they like the desert.
they're like, well, it's certain like certain species. Like I'm thinking, I'm not like I'm actually not a small mammal girly. I'm like, but they like
Oh, see, I'm not
dust
either. I'm
baths.
not normally, no.
They like dust baths and like like little like grassy things and like yeah, Russian hamsters. Someone just said Russian hamsters. Like, well, yeah, Siberian
Russian
hamsters. You
hamsters. Yes.
know, grasslands.
Grasslands. The grasslands. Oh
But yes,
man.
they do like dust baths. Like they'll take a little bit of sand and like.
That is wild to know that that is kind of what they're naturally in, and we still choose to use like aspen bedding. Not that I'm sitting here like saying anything negative about anything, but it's just wild to think like this is what we're using when they're not even accommodated to this stuff.
Right, right. So this is just like it's just breaking down the habit trail. Like let's like stop using the habit trails. Like it's just
And it
let's
sounds like when it comes down to, like you said, the reptiles, the exotic animals, it really does bottom line it at the husbandry. Like, how far are you willing to dig as far as educating yourself on the soil, the sand? Does it need partial soil, like 50-50? Does it need like a 30-70 mix, something like that?
right, right. So, for example, Exotic Keepers magazine went out to New Caledonia, where crested geckos and gargoyle geckos are from, and they were looking at the substrate of the ground, and the ground is hard and rocky, like not at all like what we would expect, but 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 we're not going to be able to mimic that in nature or in captivity. Like we can't really do a hard rocky ground that's going to hold humidity. So we have to substitute that with a sandy, soily kind of mixture. Um, but yeah, but it's interesting to think about like going out to these places and like actually looking at the dirt.
See, that's interesting too, as far as the husbandry goes, is that we do kind of have to figure out. I'm sorry, my
Hi,
cat
kitty.
is this is Kevin, everyone.
Hi, Kevin. Oh my God, I love you, Kevin.
He came to say hi.
I'm also a
You're-
crazy cat lady. Like I don't own any cats, but like as like a veterinary technician, I'm the crazy cat lady at the clinic.
Oh, I would be too immediately. Everywhere I go, like I saw a cat the other day. I'm like, where? You know, I'm thinking like I want to go get it. What do you mean?
Like, tell me about this cat.
Like, tell me more. No.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. What you're saying is like we do kind of have to substitute because rocky terrain, like you said, that what they're used to in the wild, but also considering that in the wild they have natural rain, they have natural ponds, lakes, things like that, trees, things that are going to hold in humidity. So it's like you can't really cut down a tree and then be like,
Right.
here, let's put this in your enclosure. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely. I just started following someone on TikTok who's making like a moss terrarium. Like they're growing moss from seed, not moss. I'm sorry, bamboo from seed, and like making a bamboo forest for I don't know which critter, but they're making a bamboo forest, and I think that's sick.
That's super cool.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
I know.
It
Like, I wanna
sounds
do that.
very like, I don't know, it sounds very mystical to me.
Yeah,
You know, like with the
growing.
moss and the bamboo and everything, just like very relaxing, very zen.
Yeah, like I think that would be sick.
That's awesome. When it comes to also the enclosures, like the setup and the substrate and the enrichment's important. How important is the size?
So size is going to be important. Like obviously, bigger is better. For most animals, I say that like as a little caveat. In my experience, some juveniles don't do well in their adult size enclosure. Um, that doesn't mean every reptile is that way. In my experience, I feel like geckos do better in smaller enclosures. I think they're just stupid and they can't find their food sometimes. Um,
That is true. That is so
and
true.
they're small. Like you have to think like again, critical thinking is like you're an animal this big, you're in a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot large enclosure. Like it is hard to get from one corner all the way to the other corner that has your food. So
Right,
like
like that's a whole journey for them.
exactly. So like taking all of that into consideration. So that's why I like smaller enclosures for certain baby animals. I think snakes, animals that you feed, you know, once every week or whatever it is, you drop feed them, like they can find their food a little bit easier. Um, but geckos are just dumb.
Geckos have a different brain almost because I'll catch mine looking at me sometimes and I'm like, what's going on up there, bud?
What are you doing? But yeah, so I think, to answer the question, I think enclosure size is really important. I think bigger is generally better. Because why wouldn't you want more space? Like,
Right, exactly.
hmm
But also, I guess I want to ask too, would it, if someone were to bring home, like let's say a juvenile or baby crested gecko, right? Which, you know, they're tiny little guys.
hmm
Or even, we could even say like a juvenile corn snake, because they're, again, pretty tiny for what
yeah,
they are.
well, pencil, yeah.
Would you recommend starting out with like a smaller tank? Because I've seen a lot of people put the animal into a bigger tank starting out. And
hmm
it almost seems like they get more stressed because, like you said, they can't find their food. They don't really know where to go. It's almost too much for them.
hmm I do think that a smaller enclosure works better for your crested geckos, your corn snakes, and certain animals. Ball pythons, I feel like do fine. I don't know why. I feel like they're hardy. They just do well. They don't seem to stress like other
They are.
animals do.
I feel
Yeah.
like I'm like maybe they're too calm, but they seem to be just so calm that they're okay with anything, you know?
Right. But like it is stressful for a lot of different species. So I do think using a smaller size enclosure is good for. I know it's expensive and people complain like, well, I don't want to buy like three different enclosures, and like I get that, but you know,
But it's kind of that's kind of what you sign up for when you do intend to bring home a reptile, you know?
yeah. Like, what about if you got like a big dog? Like, he's gonna have three different size dog beds. He's not gonna be in his baby bed forever.
Right. And that's a huge thing too, is that if it were a dog or even, you know, a cat, more people are apt to be like, okay, I'm going to take it to the vet. I'm going to spend the money on like nice cat trees or like dog leashes and food, this and that.
Right.
Whereas with the reptile, I mean, I'm going to be honest, with the amount that cat food is now and what we need, I could buy probably 2, 3 new reptile tanks by the end of the year, you know?
Right.
So it
I
really
know.
does balance itself out at some point or another. You just got to
Mhm.
understand that if you're going to bring a reptile home, know how big they get, know what that maximum size is, because it is going to be essential to their well
Mhm.
being.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have a juvenile Savannah monitor. He's only in a 4x4x2 right now, but like it's a mansion for him at his current size. But it's not going
Right.
to be forever.
But at least until he grows into it, he's happy and he feels safe.
Yes, yes. He's pretty. He's he's doing better than he did last year. He was mean last year, but he like they don't brumate. They Savannah monitors do something. I don't remember what it's called, but it's not like a brumation. It's different. But he woke up and he turned into a totally different lizard.
Oh no.
But it's good. No, it's a good. It's good. He's not bitey anymore.
Oh, good. Okay, so he reversed. He was a little spicy, and now he's like, I'm good. I'm fine. You
Yeah,
can be
yeah,
around
we're
me.
we're fine. Yeah, so things are okay. I'm knock on wood. He stays nice.
Right. We
Yeah.
see the way, but we think how many people don't even crate or bed train their dogs because they don't
Oh
want
yeah,
to.
because they don't want to upgrade later.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. With crate
Absolutely.
training. Yeah, you got to get different size crates. Like it's just the way it is. Like it's just part
It's
of.
part of the process.
If it was a human child, you would be buying different size things.
Right. Exactly. And that is a huge thing, is like it is still a form of life, you know? And if you view it that way as an animal lover and an animal keeper, you're going to do everything you can to make sure that their health is at its peak.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, enrichment, all the things, all the things.
Absolutely. And as far as you were talking about parasites, and it seems like
Mm,
parasites in reptiles are the main thing that
it's
comes down to
huge.
like health concerns. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big
How,
one.
other than like purchasing them from maybe someone selling them as wild caught or a giant distributor, what are some other causes or like reasons that you might end up with parasites?
Hmm.
Like if you've been keeping, you know, your snake for 5, 6 years and all of a sudden he ends up with parasites.
It'd probably be your food source, honestly. Yeah, because there really isn't like so. That's why I was saying like if you get them checked once when you first get them, that's great. That's like because you don't necessarily things might not change. Like if your food source changes, or like your food source stays the same, you're not doing anything. Like there shouldn't be any change in health, parasite wise. But potentially it's because things like the food source changed. Like I'm thinking more so like your omnivores that eat crickets. Crickets
Right.
are loaded with pinworms. So that's one that we doesn't typically affect reptiles. Like they can have a load of pinworms in them without it ever affecting them. Um, but I do think you add in those stressful situations, their immune system goes down, blah 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 blah. Um, like we talked about, then those pinworms can turn into something.
Right. And there was
Hmm.
something else that I want to say it was Mary's Webs that just commented. I'm not sure. But they said MBD, and that was another one. Was
Oh,
metabolic bone disease. That's a huge one I've
we see
heard
so
and
much.
seen. Oh,
Yeah. So I would say parasites are huge, and then vitamin deficiencies, whether it's a calcium deficiency or we actually see a lot of vitamin A deficiency of. A lot of people like forget that vitamin A is super important for certain animals, like our frogs, our leopard geckos. It's very important for eye health, um, and they don't get supplemented. So that's when we get those leopard geckos that get those stuck eye caps. Generally speaking, they're not getting vitamin A. So we see that. Definitely see MBD when we're not getting the appropriate calcium and UVB sources. Yeah, unfortunately, people when they notice, unfortunately with MBD, it's like once it's noticeable, like once it's obvious and people are worried about it, it's usually too far gone. And it's
right.
really hard to reverse those signs. Like you can't reverse MBD, but you can definitely make the animal more comfortable. and to live a more fulfilling life.
Yeah. What are some precautions that you would give to someone to avoid their reptile eventually developing MBD or
uh,
VB?
your
Yeah.
light source, like your UVB, is going to be super important. So, Zen has a tool. Arcadia has their own tool. Like, there's multiple tools out there to figure out what wattage or strength UVB you need for your specific animal based on the size of the enclosure, the distance from the animal to the light, etc. All of that's going to be really important to figure out that you're not overdoing it and you're not, more importantly, underdoing it,
Right.
because that UVB is super important. And then, yeah,
And your
supplementation.
supplements too, right? Because I've heard
Yeah,
of like, we dust our crickets and all that before giving them to our lizards and not
yeah,
necessarily snakes, but I have heard, confirm a rumor for me,
sure.
that rats are more nutritious for your snakes than mice.
Yeah, so yeah,
Okay.
the reason is a rat has more protein and a mouse has more fat. It's just their genetic makeup, how they physiologically are. Rats are a little bit more leaner and mice are fat, little fat things.
I love that. So if you're trying to like have your reptile gain weight, or your snake, I should say, or whatever reptile eats rodents, go for mice if they need to go on weight. But if you're looking for more of like a protein packed meal for them, rats are the way to go.
Yeah, like for the long term. Yeah. So I like mice for growing animals. Well, I like mixing. I just like mixing my stuff up. So like my freezer's full of various assortment of rodents.
Right.
Um, so like I like getting like, so I'll order from Rodent Pro. I'll grab a couple hamsters, mix those in, mix in some chicks, mix in some mice, some rats. Fettuccine gets guinea pigs. Um, like it all really depends on the the animal, but I like to really try to mix out um, my my protein sources.
I've heard that's a good thing to do though, is kind of like switch up the diet here and there a little bit, just so
Hmm.
they kind of have a little bit of everything going on.
Exactly, yeah, and it gives them a more like enriching. It gives them more to think about. Like they have to think about their meal.
Definitely. Have you ever used the Reptilinks by chance? I've been seeing a lot
Yeah,
about those more and
I
more recently.
I love reptilinks. I think they're fantastic, especially for tegus, monitors, omnivorous lizards. I think they're fantastic. I have used them in hognose snakes that didn't want to eat because they make a frog link, which is really great. Um,
Interesting.
so yeah, if you guys didn't know, hognose snakes primarily eat frogs in the wild. So the frog link was a very good transition for us to get them to start eating prey. It was just a little tiny guy. Um, so the frog links were good. I like reptilinks. I think that's a good option for variation as well.
Definitely. How do you feel about fish? As far, did fish have any kind of like health benefits to them for reptiles?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, like, again, species specific. Like, I'm not going to feed my bearded dragon a fish, but I might feed my garter snake or my corn snake a fish. Like, that might encounter it in the wild. I think that's really cool. Um, but yeah, in hognoses, like the ones that you find around the water. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What I wait, Hognets aren't. Like, I mean, I feel like I'm trying to like think, like, but like I've definitely seen people feed fish to hognoses and I feel like they like it. They eat frogs. So I have to be kind of near the water. We don't have hognoses here in New England. I don't know.
Right. See, we don't. No, maybe not. I've seen a hognose once in the wild down here in Florida, one time. But I remember I was like, my God, I had to be like 10, maybe 12. And I'm
Oh,
31
so cute.
now, so it was a long time ago. We might have them
Yeah.
down here. I honestly couldn't tell you, but they are
Yeah.
the cutest little things. I love them.
They are so cute.
And dramatic. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
play dead. I wish I could do that too. No.
Again, back to the possums. Yeah. I just want to play
Right?
that.
So we're coming up actually on our hour. but I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
is there anything else that you wanted to ask me or anything you wanted to add to let everyone know about reptile care and health
Oh
and
my God,
why
we
it's so
gabbed
important?
so much. I don't know. I know we talked about so much cool stuff. Like, I guess I think the most important thing is just know your species. Like, nerd out about your species. Like, like deep dive on your animal, even if it is a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko or crested gecko. Like, nerd out about them. Learn about the country that they live in. Like, I know that's a little extreme, but like,
No,
like
not at all.
learn.
I agree with you entirely. Like, I will actually, I'm that weirdo that will go as far as to be like, okay, so my crested gecko is from New Caledonia. Let's see, like, what part of New Caledonia? And then I Google image that. And then I
Yeah,
actually look at the environment and we'll try to
that is
mimic it.
perfect. Yes, absolutely. And I like to like I I'm a little I'll go in and be like, okay, so like culturally significant. What does this animal play a cultural significance to these people? Like,
Right.
how can I
Yes.
honor this animal?
Yes, absolutely. I
Yeah,
agree with
so
it
it's just like,
entirely.
yeah, just nerding out, like totally, like just learn about them as much as possible. Like, I know, like, again, the culture does not matter, but it's something that like it just shows that you're so passionate and like you just want to do everything you can for your critter.
Absolutely. Like you want to give it the best life that you possibly can. And that's a huge
Mhm.
thing I hear is like I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, my reptile's fine. They're surviving." I'm like, "But are they thriving?" You know, that's the key word right there.
Right, absolutely. And I think we can do so much for these guys. We really can as keepers. And I think, you know, we're important for the hobby, we're important for conservation. Like, we are, like, in a way, we are providing conservation and keeping these species alive, like, because a lot of them aren't protected. Well, crested geckos are, but like your leopard geckos, they're not protected.
Right.
There's a million of them out there. Um, so it's just like, I don't know. It's nice to be able to take care of that animal and like have a really nice specimen. I don't know.
Absolutely. And that's something I really agree with and I really thrive on that idea that we are essential to the well-being of these animals and why it's so important to make sure that we are taking care of them and keeping them healthy because they really don't have many people watching out for them, you know?
Right.
And it's so important to make sure that future generations can look at these leopard geckos and crested geckos and ball pythons and Burmese pythons and, you know, whatever it might be and be like, okay, this is a really cool animal.
Right. Exactly. Like, it needs to be like, the little kid who is obsessed with, whale sharks. Like, we need that. Yeah.
Right, literally.
Like, we just need that, like, with every animal.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, you know, there's a lot of stigmas, I think, to be broken. And there's a lot of different mindsets that have been kind of pre planted into a lot of people's brains, whether it's through Hollywood or it's through, you know, someone telling them, ah, your reptile doesn't need to go to the vet. It's a why, you know, that we need to break. But I think I'm seeing us finally break through these things. And I'm seeing more and more people love these animals. And it's just, it's very rewarding to see that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love seeing it. It's been a pleasure.
Seriously though, it's awesome. But that is our time for this evening. Kasey, you are
Yay!
awesome. I
Oh,
loved
this has been
talking to
so much
you.
fun. It's been
Yes,
great. Thank
absolutely.
you. Oh,
Yeah, thank
thank
you
you
for
so much for
talking to
having me.
all of us about, you know, the health of reptiles. This is something I feel like we don't really get to talk about a lot, and to have you on to talk about it has been like, it's been awesome. This is really
Oh,
educational.
wonderful. I love that so much. It's been great. I can chat about critters all day.
I love it. And guys, just a heads up before we close out, make sure you follow Kasey on TikTok and Instagram if you can, because not only does she take care of the animals, she also keeps them, and you get to see all her babies and all her hilarious content. and she's a great human being. So give her a follow. What is your Instagram handle, Kasey?
It is Sweet Ave Zoo, so like Sweet Avenue, but just Sweet Ave Zoo.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Kasey, again for coming on. You have an awesome rest of your night.
Thank you so much for having me. Good night.
Of course. Good luck with everything.
All right, bye, guys.
See ya.
Fangs out, bite the ass, screaming